Hello and welcome to another video using the St. Joseph Elementary School Lightboard. Today we are looking at algebraic expressions, and in particular we are looking at one-step algebra. Now, what are we going to be doing with one-step algebra? Pretty simple. What we're going to be doing is breaking down the question and giving you the steps needed in order to solve one-step algebra. Now, one-step algebra, pretty simple because there's only generally one step that you're going to be doing with it. And believe it or not, you might not know this, but you've probably been doing algebra your entire life. Now, if you look at this question right here where it says 3 plus n, well, that's no different than writing 3 plus blank equals 7. And a lot of you will be able to figure it out right off the hop and say, okay, well, I know that the answer is 4. But how do you show that? And I want you to think back to zero principle. And that's essentially what we're trying to do in algebra. In algebra, we're not necessarily trying to find the answer. We already have what the answer is. What we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out a scale, almost like a balance. So if you think of it like this, where you've got 3 plus n is equal to 7, that means everything 3 plus n and 7 on the other side, they're in balance right now. And that's the important concept to remember when you're dealing with algebra. And what we need to do is we need to try and find a way to get n by itself. We need to isolate this, and that's called isolating the variable. And what we're going to do is we're going to manipulate it a little bit. So let's take a look at this. What this is saying is we've got 3. So we've got 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to be adding to it n. So we've got a number that we don't necessarily know what it is yet, just n. And then together, when we take both of those, put them together, it's going to equal 7. Well, if we remember in algebra, if we remember what the idea about algebra is, it's about isolating that variable, getting that variable by itself. So if we have 3 positives here, which we do here, 3 positives, how do we get rid of positives? Well, if we think back to integers in the integer lesson, we know that if we added negative 1s to it, minus 1, minus 1, minus 1, a negative and a positive will cancel each other out. So that means that this 1 and this negative 1 will cancel, this will cancel, and this will cancel, leaving us with this box, this n, this unknown number by itself. But if you think about that for a second using this scale, wait a second, if I take away 3 from this side, this is going to be heavier now. And this is going to come down, and we can't have that. So what we need to do then is we need to be able to subtract 3 from the other side as well. So where we had negative 1, negative 1, negative 1, now we've taken 7 and we're subtracting 3 from this side. And if we look at rewriting this, it means we've got n, our unknown, is equal to 7 minus 3. And that is just a simple mathematical expression that we can solve, n is equal to 4. Now the last step for this would be for obviously to check our work. So if we have 4 here, if we've determined that n is 4, we take that number and we plug it into n. 3 plus 4 is equal to 7. So we know that that number is going to work okay. Now let's look at it over here. Now what we've got here is a multiplication one where we've got 3 groups of n. So let's draw those out. We've got a group of n, a group of n, and a group of n, and all of them together, when we add them together, are going to be equal to 15. Now, once again, I know it's kind of insulting to your intelligence. You know that 3 groups of 5 is going to be equal to 15. But how do we get those? How do we determine that? Or show the work, really, is kind of more important. How do we show the work? Well, if we know that we've got 3 groups of n is equal to 15, we've got to figure out what 1 group of n is equal to. So if we think about how do we get 3 groups down to 1 group, well, we divide. Because if we have 3 groups of n and we divide it by 3, it's going to give us 1n. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So let's divide that by 3. And of course, what we do to one side, we have to do to the other. Now, if we divide these by 3 and 3 here, they will cancel each other out, leaving us with just a single n. So n is equal to 15 divided by 3. Now, we just have math that we have to do. It's a really simple equation. So n is equal to 15 divided by 3, and the answer was 5. And 5 is the answer that we knew that we were going to have. So if we're going to put this into step by step, and this will kind of end our video, here's what you'll need to remember when you're doing algebra. What you need to do is you need to read the question and understand what the question is saying. In this case, 3 plus n equals 7. Step 2 would be figuring out what operation it is. So we know that we're adding. Step 3 would be to do the opposite operation to get rid of whatever the constants are on the one side and the other side. So in this case, we had 3 plus, so we're going to subtract 3, and then subtract 3 from both sides. Then you just simply plug the math in, so n is equal to 7 minus 3, n is equal to 4. On this side, if we do the same thing, same steps. Step 1, let's read the question. 3 groups of, or 3 times n is equal to 15. If we do the opposite operation of multiplication, 3 groups of n, we divide 3, because there were 3 groups, divide, which is opposite to multiply. We divide on the other side as well, and that's going to allow us to have n by itself, isolating the n by canceling out those variables, and giving us a single n with 15 divided by 3, and the answer is 5. So those are the steps that you kind of need to follow when you're solving one-step algebra. Read the question, figure out the operation, perform the opposite operation based on the numbers that you have. Don't forget to do both sides. One-step algebra. Thanks very much for watching.